Okay, so Illustrator, so as we were talking about before about bitmap images and vector images, Illustrator is a vector image program, okay? So I think a couple of people said they've used a little bit of Illustrator before. It's really used mainly for, I guess, creating logos and things, where you'd need vector images. So I guess there's a bit of overlap with Illustrator and Photoshop. They keep adding more and more things to both programs, so you can do, similar things in each. But in general, Photoshop is used for photo type images, and Illustrator is used for, vector images. Okay, so this is what Illustrator looks like. I know it looks really tiny and everything up there, and but hopefully you can see it on your own computer, so you'll know what I'm talking about. I actually need a bit of a laser pointer or something, I think, sometimes. So, and if you've used any of the other Adobe programs like Photoshop or anything like that, they all kind of have a similar look to them. Don't worry if you haven't used any of them at all. So what we've got on the left side down here, we've got our toolbar or our toolbox. Okay, and there's quite a lot of things on there. Is it okay? I'm just wondering whether I should close some shutters. You guys up the back, can you see the screen all right? Or do we need to, sorry, yeah, all right, hang on. Okay, so that's better. All right, so we've got our toolbox down the left side, and as you can see, there's heaps and heaps of tools. I'm not going to go, through them all. As we do a few things, we'll have a look at a few of them. But just something to note here, you'll see that some of the tools have a little triangle in the bottom right corner of the tool, and that means there are more tools hidden underneath that tool. So if they were all out, like half of your screen would be taken up by a tool. So that's why they have to hide half of them, but they're grouped by, similar types of tools. So for instance, this one that's actually the pen tool, looks like a fountain pen. To get the menu that's underneath, the tools that are underneath, I click and hold the mouse button down, and then the other menu will pop out. Okay, so you can see they're all to do with, the pen tool. You've got different things, and we will be looking at the pen tool. The type tool, which is underneath there, if I click and hold on that, all things to do with the type tool. Okay, so they're grouped together, and even on the toolbar itself, they're grouped. So you'll see like the first four, for example, and then you'll see a little line there. So they're kind of similar ones, same with the next ones. So they're, groupings as well. Okay, some of them don't have a toolbar, another menu bar underneath. Okay, that's fine. The selection tool. So, and also all of these will have a keyboard shortcut. So if you put your mouse over it, so the one on the top, the black arrow, selection tool, V in brackets. So V is the keyboard shortcut. So if you just want to change quickly to one of the other tools, and they generally all have a shortcut. A selection tool is if you want to select something, select an object and move it around. Okay, it's a similar thing in Photoshop, except it's called the Move tool. Yeah, so that's, and obviously all these tools do different things, which we will get into. On the right side of your screen, you'll have panels. These are all panels, and at the moment they're hidden. If you click on, there's a little arrow right at the top. You'll see, actually I should check that everyone's screen looks the same as mine. If it looks different, it might be a different workspace. So actually, why don't I talk about workspaces first? See, you've probably got a word up here. It says Essentials. If you don't have Essentials, then it's probably under another workspace. But I think we're the first class to use it this year, and they always send them back to default. So if you want to click on where it says Essentials, these are all different workspaces. A workspace is just the layout of the screen. So what panels are showing, and just some things like that. So they have these ones depending on the kind of work that you're doing. So if you're mainly doing some stuff with typography, so letters, okay, so if I click on the typography workspace, you'll see it expands out. I've got these ones, characters, all to do with type. Characters, paragraphs, character styles, paragraph styles, color swatches, Okay, and layers. And then you've got some other ones here. If I choose another one, web for instance, I'm making some web documents, changes again, and it has some other different ones. Okay, so, painting, yeah, as I said, there is some overlap between Photoshop and Illustrator. I would certainly use Photoshop if I was doing painting rather than Illustrator, because Photoshop is a paint program. But anyway, they've added this painting thing here. So you've got, other things there. For the moment, we'll just keep it on essentials. What you can do, however, is make your own layout as well. So if you prefer, various panels, like you particularly want the, I don't know, you like the essentials, but you want the character and paragraph panels as well. Okay, you could open those up, and they're in the window menu. To get any more panels, they're in the window menu. And see, it has a tick next to the ones that are actually open already. So if I said, oh, well, I also want those type panels, I go down to type, and there's a whole bunch of them, character, paragraph, whatever. I could click on that. Generally, if you open one up, an extra one in the Windows menu, it'll be a floating panel, but you can sort of move it over here. See how I'm moving it, and it's got that blue line? If I let go there, it'll kind of join it on here, so you can dock them together and whatever. But yes, if you wanted some extra panels, you could actually save that as your own workspace. Okay, so if I go up here, see it says new workspace. So I could do that, call it, a Nets workspace or something, and then, I'm not going to do that, I'll cancel that, but, so that way, you've got your extra panels that you like to work with. Okay, so that's something that you can do. We're not going to do that, but I'll just go back. All right, so there's my essentials thing. So just everyone make sure you're on the essentials workspace. If you want, you can open out these panels. Okay, so at the moment it's just got the little icons. So if you click on one, it'll just bring that one out. Okay, or you can expand all of them. So there's that arrow, double arrow at the top of the panels, and it'll just expand them all. Depends how much room you've got on your screen. If you've got a nice widescreen monitor like these ones, you can do that. My monitor's a little bit smaller because it has to fit with the projector. But, that's up to you really. I often like to have it out just to see what things are. So, because usually I'm looking at an icon and I'm trying to figure out, okay, does that mean it's a gradient, or what's this little sun thing? That's the appearance apparently. So I actually like to see the words, a lot of the time. Okay, so there are your panels, and in here, like I said, they're grouped as well. So you've got colour and colour guide grouped together, and they've got tabs at the top, so you can just click one to the other. Same with there. So they group them with similar things. Okay. And obviously there's nothing showing in there at the moment because we haven't got a document open. Okay, and then up here we've got our menu. So there are several places to find things. Some things you'll find in a panel, as well as in a menu, as well as on the toolbar, or you might be able to do extra things. Usually you can do extra things in the panel. So if you're choosing, if you want some type, okay, you'd choose the type tool, and then you can do some basic things like the font and the size, but you might have to go to the actual panel, the character panel or the paragraph panel, to add some extra things. Okay, so menus, yep, we'll just have, additional things. So generally the name of the menu, it relates to whatever it is you're doing, okay? So the file menu, it's pretty standard across things. File menu, you can open documents, make a new document, save documents, that sort of thing. It's got a whole bunch of, options for saving. Editing, cut, copy, paste, and those keyboard shortcuts are pretty universal. So if you're, if you're used to using like Control-C for copy in Word, it's the same here, Control-C, Control-V, Control-X, those sort of things. Control-Z, undo, very useful, okay. And then just, a bunch of different things there. Type, specifically about characters. select for selections, etc. Okay. All right. So, and just before we start on something, we're going to go into the preferences menu and just have a look at some preferences for our setup. Okay, so can I get everyone to go into the edit menu and preferences, which is right down the bottom of that menu. And then you can just click on general. So what you'll get here is the preferences dialog box. And there's a whole heap of preferences here. I'm not going to go through a whole bunch of them. You know, you can change various things. Like once you get to know Illustrator is a better time to then go back and change preferences, because then you know what you're doing. But one thing I do want to tick here, and it's on the general section, is on the right hand side, scale, strokes and effects. If you tick that box, what that means is if you create a shape in Illustrator and you put a stroke is an outline, okay, or a border, and you say it's a 2-pixel stroke, for instance. If you then make that shape bigger, we've said to scale it, so it will then make the stroke bigger as well, or smaller if the case may be. If you don't have that ticked, what that means is if you've done a really big image, like a logo, for instance, and you give someone your logo file, they put it into something else, but they want to make it smaller, so they resize it. If you haven't scaled the stroke, and it's got a stroke on it, the image will get smaller, but the stroke will stay the same size. So you're going to have this gigantic fat border around it, which is just going to look ridiculous. Okay, so I always say scale, strokes, and effects. The other stuff we don't, need to really need to do, but we can just have a quick look at it. So, like I said, it's probably better once you know Illustrator a bit more and you'll understand what these mean. Then you might want to go in and change some things. But as it is, we don't need to do things. It's just like size of leading. These are default sizes. Okay, so different things. Units. This is for if you've got a ruler showing. So we can show a ruler at the top. The units are what's on the ruler. So is it centimeters? Is it inches? Is it pixels? Okay. So this one you might change depending on what you're working on. Okay. So if you're working on a document that's going to be printed, you might have your units set in millimeters or in centimeters or possibly in points. This one is actually in points. Actually, I think what we might do is change this to millimeters. So if you can go to the units section and just change general to millimeters. Type is usually left in points. That's a standard thing for the size of type. Stroke, actually, points. I can't remember if I do that in points or millimeters. Oh, I guess we'll find out. We'll leave it in points for the moment. But yeah, just generally millimeters. What else have we got? Guides and grid, just the colours of guidelines and things. So if you wanted a, different colour, etc. Dictionary, so it should be set on English UK rather than American spelling. Okay, it has like a sort of a spell check type of thing in there, I guess. Scratch disc. So now for here, it's okay, we can just leave it with the default, but if you've got Illustrator at home, you might have different scratch discs. Scratch discs are like the temporary memory, it needs some some hard drive, somewhere that it needs to write to just for while you're working on things. Okay, so primary, it says startup. So I'm thinking with this, because you log in, actually you guys log in as a TAFE student, I log in under me, you have your own like My Documents, and it's how the TAFE computers are set up. If you're doing this at home, it might well say C drive or something else. It's got E drive because I've got my hard drive plugged in. So, but I wouldn't change that. Okay. You can have a secondary one if maybe you've got it set to your C drive at home and your hard drive is really full. So you might decide to have a secondary scratch drive and plug in an extra hard drive. Like if it keeps saying it's out of memory or something, you might have to do that, or else clean up your hard drive. Okay. Now, user interface, actually, this is another one we might have a look at. With these later versions of Illustrator, and it's the same with Photoshop, they've decided to go with a really dark background. Now, I'll probably go the same for Illustrator as I do for Photoshop. When we get into Photoshop, you're better off with a really neutral grey background rather than a dark. I mean, it's still classed as grey, I guess. It's just a really dark one. You would never have a coloured background, and I think it doesn't even actually let you change that to a colour, because the colour of the background actually influences, when you're working on something that's got colours in it, it influences it, like it tricks your eye and makes you think it's a different colour if you had a coloured background. But even with really dark backgrounds, you might think that your image is a lot darker than what it actually is, and so you'll tone it down and make it darker, and then when you go to print it, it's like really dark. What's going on? And often it's because of the colour of the background. It's just tricked your mind into thinking that your image is darker. So I generally make this a lighter colour, so where it's got brightness. So you've got 4 choices there. You don't want it like really dark as pretty much black. It was on medium dark. Medium light is probably a good one. Yeah, light is a bit brighter. Yeah, medium light is fine. Okay, that's what I'm going to change mine to. If you don't like that, I'm not forcing you to change it, but I just prefer a lighter, and it's probably easier for you to see as well if it's a bit lighter rather than the really dark one. Okay, you can change things there. Actually, the canvas colour, it's not changing that unless it doesn't give me a preview of that, but anyway. Oh, and this other one, open documents as tabs. Actually, in Illustrator, that's probably okay. In Photoshop, I changed that, but we'll get to that later. So I'll leave that one. What that means is if you're opening multiple documents in Illustrator, it'll have them as tabs. Like, when you're in a browser and you've got multiple tabs across the top, okay, that's what it looks like. So and it'll have the name up there, Sometimes that just does confuse people. They'll open a new document and they'll think their old one has disappeared, but it's just, the name is still there. It's just hidden as a tab. All right. Yep, we don't need to do anything with those. That's just talking about how black appears on the screen, so we don't need to worry about that. Okay, so once we've done those, we can just press OK. And we've now got our lighter interface colour there. Okay, so the way that Illustrator, the way that you work in Illustrator, you work on artboards. So artboards, they call your document an artboard. Okay. It's a document has artboards in it. So an artboard is basically your working area. Okay. You can have a document with multiple artboards. I can't remember what the maximum is. Maybe it's 99 or I don't know, something like that. It's a lot. It's a lot of artboards. More than we actually need, okay? But you can have, so if you're working on something, say you were doing something for a client, you're going to make their logo, and then you're going to make a business card, and you're going to make, something like a brochure or something like that for them, you can have them all in the one document over multiple artboards, because the artboards can all be different sizes. The advantage of that is, if you're creating particular colours for a project, you can have all those in your colour swatches, and then, if they're all in the one document. Okay, so you can do that, or you can have them in separate documents. All right. Oh, okay, 100 artboards. I just read something there. Okay, so let's have a look at creating a new document. So let's go into File, New, or you can see the keyboard shortcut there is Control N. And again, that's pretty standard for most things. Some of them are a little bit different, like it might be Control Shift N, like it depends what you're creating a new thing of, but in this case, we're just making a new document. All right, so we'll get the new document dialog box. if you want, you can give it a name at this point. I mean, when you go to save it, if it's actually, will it prompt you? I'm just trying to think. If you leave it as untitled, will it prompt you for something else? But anyway, let's give it a name. We're in this particular exercise. We're going to be making a I'll call it teapot. It's actually the kettle thing. But anyway, we'll just call it teapot, just to, strictly speaking, it's not a teapot, but that doesn't matter. But just so long as we've got a name there. All right, so let's have a look at the settings on this dialog box. So we've got profile. Now you can see there's a box around all these things, so that's like basically all to do with the profile. And you'll see there's an arrow, a menu on the right hand side of where it says profile, and it probably says print on your thing. So let's click on that arrow and see what the other options are. So what it's saying is, what are you making this document for, is really what it means. So you've got the option for print. Are you making a poster or something that's going to be printed? Are you making some images that are going to be for the web, so a website interface or something? Is it going to be for devices? I assume that means mobile devices. I think that's a new, I haven't really looked at that one. Is it something that's for video and film? Okay, and then you've got other ones. The reason being is they will have different resolution and different sizes to choose from. Okay, so for the moment we're going to stick with print. Right, so you can just click on print again. You can see it's got the tick next to it anyway. Now, okay, down the bottom, can you see that one that says advanced? Just click on advanced so that opens up so we can see the extra things there. Now the difference between things for print and things for the web are the resolution and the colour mode. Okay, so we were just talking about resolution in general, but in terms of print and web, or when I say web, it's really things on the screen. Okay, so that includes film and video as well. Things for printing have a higher resolution in general, have a higher resolution than things for the screen. Okay, so by default, the print profile, it's actually called raster effects here, but we already know raster means bitmap, okay, is 300 ppi, or pixels per inch. Remember I said printers are dots per inch because it's actually physical dots, but, you know, it's like it's on the screen, pixels per inch. It essentially means the same thing. Okay, your other options there, you've got high, medium, or screen. It's actually called the lowest one, screen. Okay, so by default, print ones will be 300 ppi. Screen ones, so web, film, video ones, 72 ppi. Although they are actually increasing monitor, you know, resolution and stuff, but we'll stick with that for the moment. Medium is kind of a halfway one. You might choose that if you're working on a really large file and you need to save space, or if you're printing something like billboards, for instance, actually don't need to be at such a high resolution because they're viewed from far away. So they can actually have a lower resolution. So you might choose medium if you're planning on creating a thing for a billboard, okay, for that reason. So some things you can get away with a lower resolution. All right, so we're going to leave it at 300. And then the other thing there is colour mode. So you can see there it says CMYK. I will be talking more about, I think I've got a PowerPoint actually, I have to check that, but CMYK and RGB. Essentially CMYK is for things for print, RGB is things for the screen. Although, saying that, there are some printed things that'll be RGB. One of those is actually photos. So if you're printing photos at a photo printer, so you go to your, you know, big W kiosk and put your thing in, and you'll actually get photos back. That is actually RGB printing. Okay, so CMYK printing is talking about like going to quick copy or snap printing or something and getting business cards printed or whatever. Although, again, there's changes with that too, with digital printing. I don't know, there could be other things, but in general, so I'm talking generalities here. Okay, so that's why it's got CMYK. Um, sometimes it's better to work in RGB and then convert it to CMYK just because you get some different things, but I'm not going to go, we'll get into that later on. All right, so there are our advanced settings there. Let's go back up the top here. So it's asking us how many artboards do we want in this document. Okay, let's change that to 2 for the moment. So you can either click in there and type 2, or you can just click the arrow up and it'll make it 2. Now see this little icon, these icons next to the number of artboards. That's saying how do you want those artboards displayed. So say we said like 6 artboards, for instance, or even with 2 artboards, there is a difference. It's got, you know, do you want them to display next to each other first, so 1, 2, 3, 4, or do you want them to display down, 1, 2, actually, will it go 1, 2, 3, 4? I don't know how many rows it does. I normally just do the one next to it. So, or does it just want them all in a row or all down? Okay, so we'll just leave it at the first one, grid by row, which means our 2 artboards will display next to each other. Okay. Yeah, I think it actually just displays 2. So if we said the next one, it would, you know, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 kind of thing as you went along. So some of them I find, I don't know, a little bit confusing, but you know, it depends what you're used to. Okay, the next thing, because we're just going to have a look at, you know, how this does things. We want 2 columns. Okay, so by default it's got 2 columns, so that's fine. Now the size, now remember we've already said it's a print profile. Have a look at the size, if we click on that, and the sizes that it gives us, these are standard sizes, but we can actually change them. So because it's a print profile, it's given us the metric ones down the bottom and the US sizes at the top. So if you see letter size, that's actually a US size. It's similar to A4, but I think it's a bit shorter and wider or something. So we don't want letter because, you know, we don't have letter page, but so by default this is set up to metric, the metric sizes. Okay, so it's got A4, A3 is obviously bigger, double A4, B5 and B4 are smaller sizes, different sizes. Okay, but we can still change the sizes on here. So if we don't want a standard A4 size, we can put the sizes in here, which is actually what we're going to do. All right, so we're going to change the width to 170. Now, it's come up as millimetres. Remember, we changed our unit preference to millimetres. Okay, if we had left it as, I think it was in points, then it would come up as points, and, you know, it doesn't make any sense for this sort of thing. So I'm going to type 170. You don't have to type the mm there because the units are already millimetres, so whatever number you put in, it'll just say that's millimetres. Okay? And the height is going to be 250. Now with this one, there is also an orientation, but because we've already put in the width and the height, it knows that the height is actually taller than the width. So in fact, that's portrait orientation. But if you had chosen A4, you could choose portrait or landscape. Does everyone know what I mean when I say portrait and landscape orientation? Portrait is like your vertical paper, so that way, landscape is that way, which comes from photography. So, you know, traditionally landscapes are wider and portraits are taller. Okay. All right, the next thing we can see on here, which is actually the last thing we're looking at, is bleed. Now, bleed is a graphic design term, and what it means is, so if you're getting something printed, say you're getting a business card printed, and you've got, I don't know, a red sort of background there and some other colour there, but the colour goes right to the edge of your business card or whatever it is you're printing. You always overprint. Okay, you always print a few have the colour going a few millimetres outside of the edge, and then the printer, when you take it to quick copy or something, they actually trim to size. The reason you do that is because if you just put your colour right to the actual edge of your business card, when they trim it, it might not get exactly on the line. You might end up with a little white sliver or something on the edge, okay? So the bleed is the bit that's outside of the outside of your document, okay? In this case, we're not going to add a bleed, but you know, you could, if you were doing a business card or something, you could add a bleed. And usually it's something like 3 millimeters, somewhere thereabouts. Sometimes printers will have their own set amount, okay? So if you are doing that and getting something printed, good idea to check with them and say, you know, do they have a standard bleed amount? Some do, some don't. So it doesn't, you know, just, yeah, check that out. All right. Okay, so we've got that set up, we've got our size, we're not going to change the bleed, so let's say okay. Alright, so what we've got our two artboards, okay? They're both the same size because it only gave you that option of putting one size in, but we can in fact, once we're in here, change, you know, make them different sizes individually. Okay. Now, at this point, I might just get you to save this document. Okay. Now, if you don't have anything to save it onto today, just make a folder in My Documents with your name on it. Okay, that'll be fine. And then if something happens next week, well, I'll always have mine you can continue on with. But if you go to save, or even save as, it doesn't really matter, because we haven't actually saved it yet, it'll still want to know where you're going to save it. Okay, I'm going to save mine onto my hard drive because I have my hard drive. It's a good idea to make folders and things for your different classes, okay, just so you can be a bit organised. Just that one there. And actually, when you save it, it'll come up with this dialog box. Yes, just say okay. The thing with Illustrator is you can save it as an older version. Okay, so you've got all these older versions. So if you've got, you know, maybe CS5 or CS4 at home, okay, you would need to make sure you saved it as that older version at home, you know, to be able to open it, because it doesn't play nicely with different versions. It's like opening, you know, if you tried to open this CS6 file in a CS4, you know, Illustrator. Same again, if you happen to have Adobe CC, okay, you would need to, because we've still got CS6 here, you would need to save it as CS6 to be able to open it in here. Okay. All right, so you can just say okay there. So we just know we've got it saved somewhere. All right, okay, so the first thing we want to do is show our rulers, because we're going to resize some things and it's a good idea just to have the rulers showing there. So if we go to the View menu, so for anything, if you're looking for anything, you've got to think about what is it that I want to do here. So I want to look at rulers. So View is you know, might be a logical place for the rulers, like if you don't know where it is. So you just got to think a bit logically, because there's so many menus and whatever, and you know, menu items and things. And so there we go, View, and it's about halfway down, rulers, and we just want to show rulers. And so you'll now see we've got our rulers along the top and along the side of the okay. The next thing we want is we're going to go, because we want to resize one of these artboards. Okay, I want to show you how to do this. So on the toolbox, we're going to go into the artboard tool. Now it's about, if you can see where my mouse is down here, okay, it's sort of near the bottom of the toolbox. It's like a rectangle, and it's got little corner things, I don't know, sticking out the corners, little lines. And it's above the slice tool, which looks like a knife. Okay, so if you're looking for it, there it is. So if you click on that, now with the tools, every time you click on a tool, you'll get different options along the top here that relate to that tool. Okay, so you'll see now that we're in the artboard tool, we've got a number of options up here to do with artboards. Okay, and this actually tells you here, it says artboard, we've got some presets, we've got like, portrait or landscape. You can name your artboard. Okay, so by default it's just called it artboard 1, artboard 2, but you might decide to call it, okay, I'm going to call this one logo, I'm going to call this one business card, something like that. All right, and then we've got all these different things here, and along here we've got some sizes. You can see there's some millimeter sizes here. Now what you've got here, we've got X and Y and W and H. W and H is the width and the height. Okay, X and Y is actually the X is the position across the screen, and Y is the position down the screen. So you've got the X and Y axes actually, plural. All right, and then you might, once you get into 3D, you'll also have a Z-axis, because that'll be in the third dimension. We won't talk about the Z-axis now. I'll get your head around two dimensions first, and then actually when you start doing your 2D animation, you'll be doing the X and things with the X and Y axis as well. But essentially, it's usually, so in 2D, X is across the screen and Y is down. Okay, so it'll start from, like usually a position in the top left corner. All right, so what we want to do is we want to, now by default, unless you clicked on the screen, your first artboard would be the one that's selected. Okay, and we know that because it's now got a dotted line around it, and you've got squares in the corner and in the middle of the lines, and they're called handles. Okay, so you can grab handles and resize them and do different things. Okay, so let's just have a look at changing some things here. So to start with, we're just going to change the width, which is up here. So if you click in the width, and we'll make it 90. Oops, not 900. Okay, now if you just press tab or click somewhere else, it'll, update that measurement. So you can see now, it's now made that artboard 90 millimeters. Okay, so that's how you would, if you want multiple artboards in your document, but you want them all different sizes, you'll have to create the document first, and then, obviously with the size of one of your artboards, and then you'll have to change the individual ones there. Okay, you can also grab the handles. Okay, so if you put your mouse, I'm not going to move it by the handles, but if you put your mouse over one of the handles, you'll get a double-headed arrow, and you can click and drag that to make it a different size as well. But if you want a specific size, like we just put in this specific size, then you can just type it in. All right, how do we all go with that? Yeah, we're all okay. Now, if you need to, guys, if you want me to stop at any point, just yell out. I don't want people to get behind. Okay, so if you need my help or something, just say so. Yeah. All right. So, have you been able to find the artboard tool? Yeah. It's sort of down here. Can you see where my mouse is on the toolbox there? Yep. So did you click on that? And we just changed the width to 90. Alright, I'll come and have a look. Okay, alright, so now if you want to, actually we want to get out of the artboard tool. Go back to the selection tool, which is the black arrow. Yep. And now just click on the right hand artboard. You'll see sort of a darker line around it when you click on one. Like if you're not sure which one's the active one, if you go back and forth, you'll see like a black, and it's very subtle. So Zane, are you able to open that one? Okay, so maybe it's a problem with your mouse then. Alright, so we've got our right hand one selected, and as you can see there's, little black border around there. Alright, so we're going to start by drawing some shapes onto this one. We're actually not going to really use this one. That was really just to show you how to, resize the artboard and stuff. So this is the one we're going to do. Now also what we can do, seeing as we've got that one selected, we can just fit that artboard in our window. Okay, so if we go to the View menu, and up near the top it says Fit Artboard in Window. Okay, again, it's got a keyboard shortcut, Control-0. If you remember all the keyboard shortcuts, and of course they're slightly different between Photoshop and Illustrator as well, some of them, which is annoying. Okay, Fit Artboard in Window, and it'll just basically centre that artboard in your window. Alright, so the first thing we're going to do is just to draw a rectangle. Okay, a basic rectangle. So Zane, don't worry about resizing that other one. Yep, okay. So on your toolbox, about a quarter of the way down, okay, you'll see a shape which looks like a rectangle. Alright, so we click on that. And we're just going to basically draw the whole thing. Now, to make a shape, you just click and drag. So you hold the mouse button down. We're going to do it from the top corner down to the top left corner down to the bottom right corner. Okay, so if you just click and drag, and you can see as you're doing it, this will be the size of our rectangle. Yeah. Now you'll see, it doesn't look any different. That's because our colour is white. Okay, so we've just drawn a white rectangle on a white piece of paper, which is fine because we're now going to, have a look at filling that with another colour. Okay, now while you've still got that active, and you can see now there's tiny little handles, it's got a blue outline, tiny little squares in the corner. Okay, so they're the handles for the shape. Right at the bottom of your toolbox, you'll see two colour swatches. They should be white and black by default. Okay, the one on top, and if you just put your mouse over them, don't click them yet, but the one on top, it'll say Fill, and the one on the bottom, it'll say Stroke. So what that means is the fill, it'll fill, it's the colour, the filled colour of the shape, and the stroke is the outline. Okay, so whichever one is on top. So if I clicked on Stroke, then the stroke is active. If I click on Fill, then Fill is active. So we want the Fill one to be active. So just make sure that that one is on top there. And we're going to have a look at our colour panels. Now it might have popped out, okay, when you clicked on Fill. If it didn't, it's just the little paint palette, and it should be right at the top of your panels. Now it doesn't show you much here, but we're going to expand it by, in the top right hand corner of our panel, there's a menu, and it looks like there's a tiny little arrow pointing down and some lines next to it. Okay, that's the menu. Okay, if you click on that, and Show Options, and that'll just give us some additional options there. Okay, so remember when we created this document, we said it was a CMYK document. The CMYK stands for the different colours that mix together, and now that we've shown the options, we can actually see the values of those. So C is cyan, which is blue, M magenta, Y is yellow, and K is black. All right, so and they do it as a percentage of each colour. And you have also got this colour spectrum at the bottom as well, this kind of rainbow thing. All right, but what we're going to do is type in some values there to get a specific colour. If you didn't know the values of a specific colour, you could just run your mouse over that and see it becomes an eyedropper, and you can click in different ones. You get all these different colours, okay, depending on, you know, the lighter colours at the top and the darker colours at the bottom, and yep, so you can do all that sort of thing. Okay, but what we're going to do is type in some values. So for our C is going to be 0, M is going to be 2, Y is going to be 7, and K is going to be 0. And what we'll end up with is a really pale yellow colour. I should actually say, if you're using the graphics tablet, like a tap is like a mouse click, or a double tap is a double mouse click, you know, if you need to do that sort of thing. So I tend to go between them, you know, depending on what I'm doing. So, okay, so did everyone get that colour? So it's just a really subtle pale, oh, you've got a weird colour. Okay, have a look at your values. Have you got 0, 2, 7 and 0? Yes? All right, hang on, let me have a look. Okay, so we've now got this pale yellow rectangle. What we're going to do now is copy that rectangle and change the colour of it. So the way we do that, we need to select it. So go back to the selection tool. Now it should already be selected. Unless you've clicked somewhere else on the screen, it should already be, you know, the active selection. We're going to copy it. Now you can either do Control C, or you can go to the Edit menu and copy. Okay, whatever you're more comfortable with. I tend to use keyboard shortcuts, so I'm going to do Control C. And we don't want to just paste it though. I know paste is Control V, but there's some other options here. We actually want to paste in front, which in fact is Control F. Okay, or you can get it from the Edit menu. Okay, otherwise, I'm not sure if you just pasted it. It might have pasted in front, but sometimes, you know, if you've got different levels of objects, you don't necessarily know where it's going to paste it. So we specifically want it on in front, so we're going to say paste in front. Are you still looking for the values? 0, 2, 7, 0. Yep, for that colour. Is everyone else okay? Yeah, I need a... Okay, so we should all have another rectangle, and it'll look the same because it's the same size, the same colour, you know, so you can actually see the one underneath. But what we're going to do is resize it and make it smaller. So we should be on the selection tool, okay, the black arrow. If you go up to the top, just make sure you can see the top of your rectangle. And remember I said you can see these little squares, tiny little squares. Okay, they're the handles. We're going to grab the top one and drag it down. So see there's one right in the middle of the top line. When you get that double-headed arrow, click your mouse and drag it down. And see how it's telling me what the size is as I'm dragging. I'm still holding my mouse down. We want it to be around 60 millimeters. Okay, so this is another way you can resize. Actually, we're not resizing the artboard, but yeah, we're resizing this. So it doesn't have to be exact. Okay, I'm not worried about exactness. So long as you get, you know, around about 60, I'll probably say 60 point something. That's fine. for this one, we want to change the colour. But instead of going into the colour panel, we're now going to go into the swatches panel. So which is the third one, the third panel down. It's, about three squares across and 2 squares down kind of thing. So what swatches are? Swatches are saved colours. Okay, so they're saved colours. They're so like I said, if you were doing something for a business and they had, their particular colours for their logo and whatever, you would create the colours and save them in the swatches, and I'll show you how to do that too. And then you've got all your, whatever you're working on in the one document, and your swatches are there, and it just makes it a bit easier. Okay, so swatches are saved colours. But we're just going to fill this one with black. Okay, just your standard black, which is up the top. So you can see you've got white, black. The one with the red line is no fill, so it's just an empty rectangle. Okay, so if you ever see one with a red line through it, that means there's no fill or no stroke. Okay, but if you just click on the black swatch, there's also black here where it's got the whole shades of grey. It's the same black, so okay, just click on black, and that rectangle should change to black. I'm hoping. Okay, so everyone got that? Good. What's the time? All right. Okay, now this is going to be our background. We're actually making a little poster, and we're going to make a shape into a teapot, okay? But for the moment, we're happy with that. So what we want to do is lock those shapes so we don't accidentally move them around, okay? So the way we do that, we're going to select all on the active artboard. So it's really only 2 objects. There's a couple of ways to do that. We can go to the select menu and all on active artboard, or as the keyboard shortcut there says, Alt Control A. Or you can also drag your mouse over both of the, taking in both of the shapes, and that will also select everything that you mouse over. Okay, so any of those things. And then we want to lock it, so we go to the Object menu, Lock, and Selection. Everyone find that? Do you want me to do that bit again? All right, I'll just go here. So you need to select, another way to select as well is to click on something. So I'll click on the black box, hold the Shift key down and click on the other one. That will also select 2 things together. Okay, yeah, you got a question? No, do you want to ask me or do you want me to come over there? Right, let me just show you this again. All right, so that's one way of selecting them, or I can drag my mouse over both of the things. It doesn't have to go over the whole thing so long as it takes in some of it. Yeah. Or you can go up to the select menu, all on active artboard, etc. Okay, so once they're both selected, then go to the object menu, lock, and lock selection. So once you've locked it, it means now I can't select them anymore and I can't move them around.